Hello, friends on Elevate Your Wellbeing. It's great to have you here today. I think it's our 64th session. I haven't counted in a while, but our topic today is juggling life through COVID without dropping our bundles. So welcome to you all. And I guess it's a pretty relevant topic. For us in Australia, we've been in lockdown. Many have been in lockdown for a few months now, and in Sydney and here in the Illawarra, we've been in lockdown for 5 weeks, and it continues. And so how do we deal with juggling all of life's responsibilities that are normally there on top of COVID and what COVID brain does to us? You know, families are just really struggling at the moment, and particularly families with young kids and having to do everything plonked down on top of them with homeschooling and working from home, etc. We know the drill. It's been happening for a while. But how do we handle all of those responsibilities without just throwing our hands up in the air the whole time? So in the chat box, for those of you who are here, if you just want to say hi and let me know what COVID has meant to you, has meant for you. What has been your greatest challenge through these last 18 months? Just so I can really speak to what resonates for you. What has been your greatest challenge through the past 18 months? You know, a dear friend many years ago did a picture. I think this will make it better. Of what it looks like for a family. His name is Paul Nuss, this guy who did this great cartoon for me. One couple juggling life on a tightrope with expectations coming from work, coming from their family of origin, coming from themselves, and walking this tightrope, trying to juggle everything, whether it's dealing with getting their income. For John, it was being on call, and I gave a talk on stresses and burnout for medical lives and their families, medical people and their families. Just the stresses of burnout, difficult patients you can see there, all the different families, kids holding on to the tightrope as we go. And then there's grief, there's burnout, there's loss, there's people trying to climb the ladder and lack of privacy we've got here. All sorts of things that get in the way when you are juggling life and adding onto that with all the children in your families as well. So what has been your greatest challenge? I'm going to send out a book, Elevate Your Wellbeing, to the person who responds the most in the chat today, because it really helps me know how I can engage with you and how I can help you. And can I say that really helps the guest speakers as well. Thank you for those of you who have encouraged the guest speakers just by letting them know what you appreciate about their talk, saying what has resonated for you. Use that comment section to just answer the questions and let us know that you're here. So Alison, hi, my sister in the States. Let us know for you what's been your greatest challenge in the last 18 months through COVID. You see, it is an uncertain future and it's constantly changing, and we have to change our plans and delete our plans. And I can't tell you, I'm an old-fashioned person with an old-fashioned calendar, and I have the month up there, and I can't tell you how many rollouts of whiteout that I have gone through in the last 18 months, just deleting all the plans. Jane's saying reducing income and contact with family members. That has been the most difficult for sure. Rachel's saying lost a holiday of a lifetime. That was at the beginning, wasn't it, Rachel? Seeing your brother in Scotland and a big family holiday, which would have been creating such wonderful memories for you. And then the daily challenges, helping all the family members as well as time for yourself. And it's getting that balance, isn't it? That balance of amidst constant change, amidst unpredictability and responsibilities dumped onto you that you weren't signing up for. It wasn't in your job description. And being forced out of your comfort zone, not just choosing to get out of your comfort zone. It's one thing choosing, but when it's plonked on you and you don't have any time to prepare for getting out of your comfort zone, when you don't have any warning or choice, that's another stress altogether. So keep on letting me know what is your greatest challenge. Alison's saying keeping afloat with the ever-changing plans and protocols while teaching school in person. That's right. And so being forced out of your comfort zone with no say in it is a huge stress on anyone. Or juggling ongoing grief. For me, I know I'm in a generation where COVID has less impact, and I'm the first to acknowledge this, that, you know, with children who have left home without those responsibilities of homeschooling plonked on you, and you know, knowing that every dollar counts in what you're earning, you know, being semi-retired, it's an easier stage of life to cope with COVID. I personally feel, but then there are others in my situation who might not feel that, so I want to honour that as well. But what I'm saying is my hardest heartache is missing our children and grandchildren, not being able to see them. That's my maternal heart. So that's ongoing grief, and it's important to acknowledge those griefs, those losses that you have of missing out on the stages of your children and grandchildren's lives, and particularly when you've got somebody who has died in your family and you've only been able to have 10 at the funeral and dealing with that. I have a friend of a funeral today who, you know, she's going through that, and of her father. And so it's a real stress. And if you're living on your own in particular, there are additional stresses, and it could be boredom in having all your groups dismantled through COVID, through shutdown. It was interesting the other day, we took dear friends on a walk, on a bushwalk. It was a fantastic day up at Barren Grounds. And at the end of it, my dear friend said, well, thanks, that was such a great way of using up most of the day. And we all laughed in hysterics because we could relate. It resonated. How do you fill your day and make it exciting? Choosing mini holidays. And I'm going to talk about mini holidays when we can't go on a real holiday. So, Alita, great to have you here. And you're saying not being able to have classes and missing seeing your grandchildren and having to deal with extra technology. That's right. So, keep on putting in the chat bar, what are the stresses that you find that you have to juggle on your particular tightrope? So the family that walks on this tightrope, they're heading in the same direction, yet they're slowed down by children's and other needs, and more responsibilities are given to them as they inch forward. They're trying to cross that tightrope. They're inching forward and trying to get some balance. Each of us has some common balance items that we balance, but some are unique pressures. It might be changes in our responsibilities that require us to redistribute our balance and rebalance the existing load. So what's happened to you through COVID lockdown that has forced you to redistribute your load? You see, just put in the chat box if any of you since last March, 18 months ago, have increased in any of these things? Forgetfulness. Do you find yourself drifting off when someone's talking to you? Do you find yourself drifting off when you're talking yourself? Do you find yourself drifting off while you're talking to you? Do you find yourself talking to yourself more? Have you got an inability to focus on what you're doing? Do you have a general lack of motivation? Do you find yourself just floating quietly out to sea? Your mind just going into, lockdown itself. And that's not just the Zoom meetings when your mind goes into lockdown. That's just overall. So I want to reassure you, you're not going crazy. The problem has a name. It's brain fog, and it's called COVID brain. And thanks to all these large, unprecedented levels of stress, we're all experiencing COVID brain is a reality. And so, I found myself the other day, I was looking for my reading glasses for a couple of minutes, and then I realized, guess where they were? On my head. So, you might be, another time I was looking for the keys of the car, and guess what? I was holding them. And same thing with my mobile. So there's little things that I'll talk about this in another whole session, because it's the cortisol, the stress levels that just increase enormously. And in our brain, it makes our brain function very differently. And I'll address that in another session. Alison's saying, handling different positions on so many COVID issues, masks or no masks, vaccination or no vaccination, respecting different people's positions on these issues. Yeah. And seeking unity even amidst vastly differing opinions. My word, yes. And trying to understand, everyone has a different point of view on this, about being vaccinated. And so, and the importance of that, or, the opposite. So it is, when you're working with people that have vastly different opinions, it raises stress levels as well. And then, if you're doing your best to get doubly vaccinated, and if other people aren't, what does that bring up for you? It brings up more stress. And so walking the tightrope is more tricky. You feel more unbalanced. So how could we become better at juggling? And I've got a picture here of different stress loads that we go through. So let's look at, well, first of all, let me try some juggling. So this is how hard it is, okay? It's lemon season, so I've got plenty of lemons, but it's good. I didn't have to practice this because I knew I had to be pathetic. Okay, look how easy it is for me to juggle just 2 lemons. I can actually do that. But as soon as I add another one to my load, impossible. Can't do it, all right? Really, really tricky. So, hi Luke, glad you've seen me trying to juggle. And so what are you juggling at the moment? And this is a bad lemon, I've just noticed. So you might be juggling bad stuff, like sour stuff as well. So when we're juggling and it all seems too stressful, what could I do to make the juggling process easier? I could juggle, as I said, I could juggle less, okay? What I can manage only. Or I could take lessons to improve my balance as I juggle, and my timing, okay? Educate myself. I could juggle smaller lemons, okay? Let's see if it's any easier if I'm juggling mandarins. Oh, yes, it is. I can actually handle that. So I could make my things that I juggle actually smaller. It actually works, okay? I could only do 2 lemons, but I can do 3 mandarins. Whoa! Okay, so lessen the load, making the load segments actually smaller. And then I could get somebody to share the juggling. If John was here with me right now, we could juggle more together, okay? I could ask for help. So what's the simplest or most effective option for you through this COVID time out of those 4 things that I've just suggested? Juggling less, taking lessons so you become really improved with your balance and your timing, taking lessons in the things that you need lessons on, juggling smaller activities or smaller things for your brain and your body, or getting someone to share the juggling with you. What resonates for you the most? What is the action step that you want to put into place at the end of this session out of those 4? You might want to do all 4, but what's the thing that resonates for you right now? Hi, Christine. I know you are juggling twins right now as you're listening to this. So, hi, guys. So when you are juggling a lot, if we don't have any pressure in our lives, it's interesting. If we have the opposite in our lives, there's a tendency to become lazy and bored. So each of us have a comfort zone in which we work our best, in which we're at our best. A certain amount of stress actually produces the best in us. It brings out the best in us. But when the comfort zone is overtaken with too much stress, our performance drops. So let's look at this. I'm going to have to wipe all those off to see that I've got this right. I hope you can see that clearly. Again, that'll be better. So, can you see that there's there we go. Okay, so the vertical line here is your capacity, okay? Your capacity for pressure. I even need somebody in holding this up for me. Okay, so your capacity to perform, and you've got pressure on the horizontal line. So if you're underloaded here, okay, you're not performing at your best because you can go into boredom, all right? So we need somewhat of a height here to get to our performance, our peak performance, all right? And that is your comfort zone. That area is your comfort zone for balancing and timing, but it's enough pressure that gets you stimulated and going, okay? When the comfort zone's overtaken with too much stress, our performance drops and we're unable to cope, as you can see here, okay? You've got your danger zone where your limit of endurance reaches and you've got overload. So when that is too much, you're unable to cope. And a lot of stresses, one after another, will lead us to meeting our limit much, much more quickly, as this will show. Can you see the difference here? When you've got a lot of stresses, you reach your overload much more quickly, okay? Here, over time, with a smaller amount of pressure. It takes only a tiny little thing to just get you up into high stress mode where you want to do fight, flight, or freeze because it's just too overwhelming. So if you have a baseline of a lot of stresses and then just one little stress, one extra burden causes you to just throw up your hands in overwhelm. You drop all your bundles at once. And I know for me, so COVID's been going for 18 months. I've had chronic fatigue for 15 months. And although I'm improving, I was down at 20% of my energy levels when I first got this. And so the load, I had a baseline of low energy. And so my brain wasn't working well. My body could only handle, I had to cut out half my life. I had to cut out half of the load that didn't feel like a load because I had a balanced life anyway, but I had to cut out half in order to actually manage life and allow myself time for good, like 10 hours of sleep a night, nana naps, even though I'm not doing nanaing at the moment because I'm missing the grandkids. But it's just like when your load, when you know you have a different baseline to normal, we need to try and manage that lower baseline by limiting our load. And the wisest thing for me to do was to halve my load, which is what I did. And so gradually I'm improving. But what is your baseline? That's an important thing to think about. So it's interesting how people deal with increasing their what fills their emotional tank. And when you fill your emotional tank, you find that the stress levels actually decrease. So I want to look at that for a moment. How can we increase filling our emotional tank? And one way to describe this is just a weird, funny story about a fuel tank. If we can relate it to the fuel tank in cars, two women were driving together when suddenly they heard a really loud rumbling noise. And the female driver explained to her friend that her son had dropped a golf ball into the fuel tank to indicate when the fuel was almost out, when the tank was running on empty. And when the loud noise happened, it was the sign of the ball making a rumbling noise that told the mother that the fuel tank was almost on empty, so she didn't have to continually be embarrassed by running out of fuel. So when you hear loud noises, when you hear rumbling noises in your life, it might be through health deteriorating. It could be through you getting angry for tiny little reasons. It's looking at how you can fill your emotional tank. So put in the chat box, what fills your emotional tank? We have here things like pot fillers, like all the good things. What things do you put into your emotional tank to fill it so you can handle the stresses of life so much better? Because we have pot fillers here. We have pot drainers. What drains your emotional tank? Let's look at what fills it first. Just pop in the chat box. Alison's saying juggling less or sharing the load is what resonates for you. And what actually fills your emotional tank that gives you strength, that gives you energy to actually be able to do more through the day without dropping your bundle. Enjoying the water, okay, getting out and enjoying going to beautiful nature spots. That's right. And might I say, actually drinking water is the best replenishment you can have. Just H2O, doesn't cost a cent. Don't have to go anywhere for it. Just get to that fridge or tap and drink more water. That is a great replenishment. Also, put in the chat box what else you find to fill your emotional tank. For starters, I find spending time out in nature, whatever that is, if it's the bush, the ocean, the river, and being active in it. Time out for myself. Alison saying being still and listening to replenishing music. Yes. Restorative music, upbeat music, soothing music. Jane saying walking out in nature, listening to upbeat music. Wow. Hey, we're on the same page, Jane. And painting, using your natural creative talents, yes. And producing something. I just loved it the other day when I produced, I was so proud of this gift box, the beautiful wooden box that I'd produced for a friend who's going through a really rough time at the moment. And it was just lovely, a gift box of putting all different little nourishing gifts in it. But I actually created that in the box and the bows and everything. And because I'm not that creative in that way, I felt proud of that. That was replenishing to me to give in that way. Margaret's saying meditation, listening to music, walking and talking with my bubble buddy. Fantastic. Having a bubble buddy is so important, isn't it, Margaret? Time out with God, I find, is really replenishing. That fills my emotional tank. It fills my soul. Alita's saying sunshine, craft and creating. And when you're in relationship with somebody, what fills your couple emotional tank? Is it time together? Time out. John and I go out on more dates through this time than we have for a long time. We actually call them dates. We'll go on a cycling date and just get a takeaway lunch. We'll go on different, just all sorts of different wacky dates to have special time together. It's like having a mini holiday when you can't have a real one. Jane's saying, I painted 20 rocks and set up a treasure hunt for the kids on my street. Their joy and excitement rubbed off on me. I just love that. The joy and excitement of just listening to that, Jane, rubs off on me. Good job. I wish I lived in your street. I'll pretend to be a kid and enjoy that treasure hunt as well. What a wonderful idea. So taking time out for recreation, feeling loved and appreciated, all of those things are so, so important. What empties your emotional tank? What are the pot drillers that just, when it's like like a tap being left on, drip, 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 it gradually drips out of your emotional tank, or the whole tap might be bursted on and it's just coming out suddenly. It can happen two ways, and it's really important to be careful of the way where it just drips because we don't notice it so much. And as couples, in a couple relationship, I just find it really important that we be intentional to juggle out, because when we have to juggle a lot of different responsibilities, it's much harder when our relationship tank is running on empty. And if we're not careful through COVID lockdown, our relationship, our marriage tanks can plummet to empty. And that really can cause a lot of hassles then, because we're not dealing with any part of life well. I know I had a couple sharing with me the other day recently about their relationship, and they felt that they just weren't on the same side. They were hearing those grumbling noises, like, you know, the empty tank with a golf ball in it. They were really loud rumbling noises. They were shouting at each other. They never used to do that. They were cranky and irritable. Those day-to-day stresses just caused them to skyrocket really quickly. They disagreed on parenting and discipline. You know, they said our time seems to be taken up with reacting to problems rather than dreaming dreams like they used to. And it was a really good way that they put it. And then the guy said, you know, making love seems like it could just limit itself to birthdays and Christmas these days. And it just, so things had just plummeted in their relationship. And to notice it and to do something about it and be intentional through these COVID times, you will be able to have the resourcefulness within your own relationship to then be able to deal with all those extra added responsibilities. So be kind. Everyone says be kind to yourself. I want to encourage you to say, be kind to your relationships. Be kind to your most precious relationship. If you have a faith, be kind to your relationship with God, because that will soothe your soul and replenish your soul. If you're in a marriage, be kind to the loved one that you chose to live life with every day. If you've got children, be kind in those relationships. So we have to find a way of plugging the leaks so we can return to enjoying each other's company if you have gotten down, if you've actually plummeted in the relationship through the stresses of COVID. And I want to say to you this, Brené Brown has an excellent, she's a researcher on vulnerability and shame and all sorts of things. And an excellent social researcher, and most of you would know her by now. And she talks about, with the emotional tank, just asking your partner, how are you going out of 10? How was your day? How are you feeling inside out of 10? So your day might have been a 6, but you might have gotten through the day inside with your inner resources of being 8. So the question is, how are you inside? Your day might have been an 8, but you, with the activities, with the things that went well for you, but you might be feeling inside like a 2, because you might just be so sad that you're not seeing your grandchildren. You are deeply missing them. Your heart is aching. So ask your partner, what on a scale of 10, how are you doing in your soul today? And if your partner's low on it and you're a few points higher, then you can be alert to just helping them to be lifted up. And that will help your relationship, and it will help you knowing that you have served your partner well in loving them the way you want to. So take time out to do that. Currently, when we're not able to take the holidays and we're missing out on the holidays that you originally planned, what would a mini holiday look like for you? Just put in the chat box, what can you do that is like a mini holiday? For me, it's just as simple as being out on the river, on the sandbar, and chasing. I hope there's no nature lovers extraordinaire that might be offended by this, but I just love running after seagulls, and I miss my little Oliver because he and I used to always do this together. We have hundreds and maybe sometimes 600 seagulls all at once out on the sandbar of the river. And as soon as we're there, we just run towards them to see them all flock up in the air. And I just love to do that still, even though I haven't got my little Oliver to do it with. Chasing butterflies, picking the daisies, go out with one child at a time to a milk bar. Have time one-on-one with them. Do a dance with them. Just in the kitchen, take them on a picnic lunch, go for a walk together. Take time to show your appreciation. So that costs nothing, and the rewards are like gold. It's interesting, years ago, and let's see, Christine's 20, this was 32 years ago when John's father died. 32 years ago, Christine was 8 months old in my womb. And John's dad died really suddenly, a heart attack on an ECG stress test. And he was just ruling out any indigestion, any heart problems. The doctor and he both thought it was just indigestion. But he said, just hop on the ECG stress test and we'll check out your heart just to make sure there's nothing happening there. And boom, died on the spot. When John gave the eulogy at his dad's funeral, and it was beautiful, but it made me think, boy, I wish Alex could have heard that. Boy, I wish he could have just heard those words that his son was saying to him. And it made me realise eulogies are fine at funerals, but why not show our appreciation to our loved ones now, right now? Write a letter to your partner or your children to tell them how much you love and appreciate them. Tell them how much you enjoy being their wife or their husband or their mother or their father. Hide notes in their lunch boxes, in their cornflakes, under the toilet lid, wherever, under their pillow. Put beautiful notes of affirmation into their lives so that they can hear how you feel about them now. Don't wait until a funeral. Don't wait until it's too late. So we've looked at juggling life more effectively by having a full emotional tank and by encouraging our loved ones along the way. We can also minimize the amount we juggle. Remember the saying, less is more. less is more. Focus on being rather than always doing. Okay? We are called human beings, not human doings. So I figure that our Creator values the being essence of us a bit more than the doing this, juggling here, there, and everywhere, and dropping our bundles along the way and not knowing who we are inside. So focus on trying not to be perfect. It's okay. It's okay to make many mistakes. We do it every day. We don't need to be perfect. Try not to spread yourself too thinly. Try not to be all things to all people, because we're never going to be. Learn to say no without feeling guilty. So the balancing, let's look at balancing now. That timing and balancing, that is really important. Like washing machines, they can teach us a lot about balance in our lives. When the washing machine is unbalanced, what does it do? Just put in the chat box. What do you notice when you have the clothes are unbalanced in your washing machine? What do you hear? What happens to the washing machine? It makes a terrible clanging noise, doesn't it? And it cuts off, yeah? So you lift the lid and you redistribute the load and it starts again, yeah? So each of us benefit by seeing balance in our lives between different aspects of our lives. And those different aspects, we have our spiritual, our emotional, our physical, and social needs. And developing each of these areas enables us to draw strength and endurance to cope with life stresses. Don't miss out on one of those areas of your spiritual, your emotional, your mental, your physical, and your relational well-being, your social needs. All of those are really important. Being spiritually fit helps us to draw on God's measureless resources if we have that faith. We also can draw on resources of looking at ways to keep our emotional tank full that we've already discussed. And being physically fit enables you to cope with unexpected burdens because it raises your mental fitness as well. So the lessons in life are really important to actually, if we're not equipped with resourcefulness in whatever it is through the stresses that you're going through COVID, it might be just dealing with stress. So read a book on stress. It might be dealing with loss and heartache. So read a book on that or get counselling. Go get that extra help. Educate yourself. I want to ask you, what out of score of 0 to 10, what value do you put on investing into yourself? Do you put a 6, a 2, a 10? What value out of 10 would you put on investing into your own personal growth? Because learning what you need to know automatically decreases your overwhelm. I want to see some numbers in the chat box. How much do you value your personal growth, your personal development? Because I just remember the other day, who watched The Voice recently in Australia? It was just finished 10 days or so ago. Do you remember the name of the winner of that? The beautiful woman who won The Voice. I think her name was Bella. Beautiful, beautiful woman. And she had spent her whole life investing in her children, investing in everybody else. She just had such a giving heart, such a servant heart of love and kindness to everybody else. And then it dawned on her that she wanted to invest in her singing and have a crack at going on The Voice. Well, guess what? Because she chose to invest in her voice, because she chose to have a crack at going on that show. We are the ones who are incredibly blessed from her investing in her voice, because you know what? She won that show. And I only watched the last 2 episodes, but I cried every time I heard her sing. And if it wasn't for her giving investment into herself and developing in the area that she wanted to at that time, we wouldn't have had that opportunity of being joyous for her and through her, the beautiful gift of her voice. So what do you want to invest in for yourself? Your own personal development. I'm seeing some good high numbers there, which is fantastic. It's not a selfish thing. You are a gift and we're waiting to receive you. The world is waiting to receive you. So learn from the leaders and the gurus in your area that you want to progress in. Young parents and parents of school kids, I just want to say something to you. I know you're juggling so much through this time. Have you ever thought about why we have to learn how to drive first in order to get our license? How many hours have we got to get? I think it's in Australia, it's 120 hours of learning to drive from somebody who knows first before we can get on the road on our own. Why is that? Obvious reason. Put in the chat box. Why do we need to learn how to drive before we get on the road ourselves, in behind the driver's wheel? Easy. The reason is to save lives on the road, right? Well, how many hours do we invest into raising lives, into raising those little lives? We care about saving lives. Do we invest in the same proportion and more into raising our little children in the best possible way that we can? When you're low on energy, which is only natural through the parenting times, and you have to juggle so many responsibilities, and particularly through this COVID time with homeschooling and everything else, what resources can you go to? Get a parenting course. Go and have that time in a parenting course. Get the top resources by reading. Likewise, if you're stressed or overwhelmed, there is help. It's a strength, it's an actual strength to face your vulnerability and to receive counselling or extra support. We often don't see the battles people are struggling with inside. But my challenge to you is take a step, reach out to those who you know are struggling. And if you are struggling yourself, if you're trying to juggle too many things at once, own that, face that, and ask a friend for help or go to see a professional. Get those buddies to support you, because we're all in this together. So if this has been helpful to you, please tell me which parts have resonated for you. I'd love to hear that. The guest speakers love that encouragement, and so do I. And please tell me what parts have meant the most to you. What's your take-home message from today? The simple take-home message that you have personally got from today. And then how are you going to act on it? Put it in the comments section. It'll make you act on it more thoroughly, and it'll intensify your action of actually doing it. It'll be an accountability factor. So share your lessons and learnings, and when you press share, it's what you're giving back to somebody else. So just press that share button and invite people to this group. It's wonderful to have you on board. And until next time, be courageous, be life-giving, and let your beautiful light shine.